Hey guys, this is Julian from the Binary Lab. I just want to make this video on the topic of pain. Alright, I was just picking up from yesterday, and yesterday I was talking about like how the market sometimes messes with your head to kind of like make you make bad decisions. Well, pain is one of the ways that the market makes you make super bad decisions. And the kind of super bad decision I'm talking about, I'm going to basically draw you an example and kind of help you understand it and just basically try to get your head around it, right? So, what kind of super bad decision am I talking about? Well, you probably remember one of those times when you, after a series of loss, you saw the market was dangling a big fat carrot like, trade me. Could be a super long candle, and what do you expect with a super long candle? Reversal or something. Or you see a super long consolidation, and you got all your bets staked on something that you didn't really go into you didn't really research the whole thing well, and whatever you did, like either a big reversal trade or breakout trade or trend continuation trade, well, you probably perceived it as something that it wasn't. I mean, you had the right idea, but it wasn't exactly that. And even if you had the right idea, you didn't take the right money management, and because of that, you made a big mistake. How does this happen? Alright? Think about those times in the movies. You watch an Avengers movie, or Marvel's a Marvel's universe kind of movie, and this happens in almost like all the Marvel's kind of movies, where there's some bad guy. He wants to take his revenge against the good guy, and because of that, he sought great power from some strange, super evil, ethereal being, so they can have revenge. But as soon as later in the story, if his power was once taken away, he is left with more personal destruction. You saw this happen in Star Wars. You saw this happen, Darth Vader, right? You saw it happen in Star Wars. You saw this happen in Thor. Most of the Avengers, you have Thor with Loki, okay? And they're often left with much more misery than they began with. It almost never turns out well. And it's like the same when you kind of submit to the motivation of pain, it almost never works out well, okay? But speaking of which, pain can also be a very good motivator. But now, let's talk a little bit about the psychology about why this happens. So, this happens because when you are doing, here's the process of human motivation. People can be motivated in two different ways. One, for happiness. You want to get, happiness for yourself, or you want to make someone around you really happy, and that's your motivation. The opposite of happiness is sorrow, and the peak of sorrow is pain. What happens is you maybe have experiencing a problem, and the problem gets to the point that it's so painful, and when it's very painful, you're desperate, and you're looking for solutions. Think about a case when perhaps, imagine there was a guy with a wife who was expecting, and the water bag burst, and she's about to give birth. Ambulance wouldn't pick up. No doctors on call in the area. Nearest hospital is 40 minutes away. Man's wife is suffering, screaming, in pain. There's blood loss. Feelings that she's having feelings that she's never had before, because this is a brand new experience for her, and she's scared at the same time. The husband is worried, sick, because he's never seen this kind of anguish on a wife. Because he's like, honey, let's get in the car. let's double up to the hospital real quick. And because of that, the guy, pays no attention to speed limits, pays no attention to the red lights, and just gets all the way, just rushes the best that he could to the hospital. Eventually they make it there in time. But in the process of doing so, the red lights that they ran, the speed limits that they didn't pay attention to, they were possibly putting other people at a lot of risk. Thank God they were okay. But there was a lot of risk, and something could have happened at any point. This whole action of wanting to save the wife and the baby's life could have possibly wound them up all dead, which would be a much worse outcome than they wanted to, or they had to begin with. All right, you get my point. So, the human decision process, like I said, under the extreme pain, we're extremely emotionally attuned and can have an emotional response to something, and we may overreact. We may lose our sense of thinking. I also mentioned in another video where I was talking about like the psychological phenomena of why people do worse in life versus in demo. It is the same thing. When the blood flows away from your brain into your body, the fight or flight response, you will not be able to handle the same way as you normally can. And so in this scenario, okay, this is that as well. Where do you think the blood is? When you're feeling this pain, you're feeling this heartache, okay, you're feeling desperation, where do you think the blood flow is? It's not going to be anywhere but here. So the ways to combat this is very simple, okay? In trading, there's something called stop loss. And on top of that, there is the reset. When you stop loss, you reset and you think of it as, okay, next trade. You do not compound your losses. When you talk about compounding your losses, maybe like some of you made really bad mistakes in martingale. Martingale is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you use it the right way only. And a lot of people may not be using it at the right times, maybe wrongly deploying it because of the emotional response that they have. Because of the emotional response that they have, maybe you fail to notice that all the conditions are not yet in place. But it looks kind of like it, and therefore, you're just desperate. It's like, shit, I'm in my last 15 minutes of my trading time today. I made such a big mistake that I didn't plan to make, and I gotta solve it right now. What happens? That happens. So you gotta calm yourself down. Firstly, if the stop loss got you out, you gotta calm yourself down. You can do this a variety of ways. Ultimately, you gotta calm yourself down. You can do some like deep breathing. You can do something else. Drink a cold drink. Talk to someone. Unbottle that stress. Let the sanity sink back in. Inside of the Binary Lab Elite, I recently taught my members a very special, unique way of breathing. Okay, it's a very peculiar way of breathing that is actually able to reset, and you can actually augment the body's rhythm, autonomic nervous system. You can augment it and help you regain some sanity at any time when you want it. Very cool, right? So that's one of the ways that you can actually combat it. That's probably the best way. But unless you're in the Binary Lab Elite, you probably want to start with all these other things that I mentioned, and these other ways will help you gain your sanity back into trading. Okay, but the method that I recently taught to the people in Binary Lab Elite, well, this method, you can actually deploy it, and within 20 seconds, I tell you, your blood's going to be back in your head. And this is excellent for anyone who's under an intense situation, especially for binary traders. In Forex, well, it doesn't really get that intense, but sometimes, we still can lose our focus. So, once you bring yourself back into focus, you have to make this decision. Okay, what are we going to work on? Are we going to try to rebuild? Are we going to recover? Or how much are we going to recover? Let's have a very realistic plan. Let's assess the situation very realistically, and after realistically assess the situation, like how much of a market risk is at stake? How much volatility is at stake? And if we assess the situation properly, we can then make the correct decision. Like, do we just want to recover 25% of this and we're done? Do we want to recover the 50%, or can we recover 100%? Can we even make a profit? not every situation is going to have the same kind of response. Let's say, like Brexit, or there's like some kind of elections, some kind of a market crash. Okay, we cannot expect the full recovery, but we can expect some amount of recovery. And every situation is different. I tell you guys, sometimes you can experience a whole movie in your trading session, right? What I mean by experiencing a whole movie is that every movie has a story structure. Like the hero has a certain goal. Along the way, he experiences a problem, and upon experiencing a problem, he makes a decision that makes it impossible for him to ever revert to the same thing again. And then along the way, he realizes there's a different goal, and then there's some kind of a complication, and then there's an ending. So why is that relevant to the trading? Because what I'm trying to say is that along the way, something may happen differently. For example, in a trading session, you may make some mistake, and then you may recover from it. And then because of that, you feel, although you went through a lot of risk, but you also feel kind of like, manly, or you feel kind of like great, brilliant, genius. And then you feel that, okay, the next problem that happens, I'm going to do it the same way. But no two situations are the same. You probably know that by now. And the next time you went into a similar situation, kapoof, you blew a whole bunch of, the whole week's profit, or maybe even 2 weeks worth of profit. Not very smart, right? There are some situations that you can, in a very painful situation with trading, some situations can be salvaged entirely. Some situations can be salvaged with profit, but not all of them can. And you have to be ready to accept that. Okay, accepting this will make you a much better, much more complete, much more mentally defended trader. All right, and I know it's kind of like painful to sometimes face up to the truth, but we must, because failure to face up to the reality will put us in an even worse reality. So in the Binary Lab Elite, what I teach is not just the psychological defense, the psychological strategy, psychological management, but when it comes to the trading sides, I teach more than methods or strategy. I teach like I teach adaptation skills to the market. Would you believe that the market is ever evolving? And unless we're able to adapt to the market's changes, we'll never ever be able to pin it down to a strategy. And this is the reason why, even for automation, there needs to be so much tweaking all the time. Continual tweaking. I monitor my automated system every day on the Forex area. And some of these times, the best solution is just to withdraw. Withdraw the trading on that pair at that time. When we're doing manual trading, we adapt constantly, and when we adapt, we have to have a system of ways to assess and then adapt. Without having a yardstick, how would we make the correct decisions? You saw in my previous video where I talked about how the market messes with your head. Sometimes it gives you multiple opportunities, and in the presence of multiple options, one seems better than the other. But how do you know that all three are bad? Okay, so in this training, I'll be giving you external yardsticks, our own Binary Lab yardsticks on how you can assess every situation, and so you can cope it in the best possible way. So if you have any questions on how Binary Lab Elite can help you with your training, if any of the things here made sense or caught your attention, drop a message or just sign up. Go to thebinarylab.net and basically click on the join button and click on Binary Lab Elite. If this is if you're actually just starting out and you want and you find that, hey, I think this is kind of heavy. I don't even know about the charts here. I don't even know about the basics of trading. Well, then maybe you might want to start the Binary Lab Basics and work your way there. So in Binary Lab Basics, it's already going to get you some very decent results. But if you want the mental breakthroughs, that's going to be Binary Lab Elite. Take your time, work your way up. By the way, some of you are just thinking too hard. What if I take this, I'll lose the other one? No, you do not lose the other one. In fact, if you take Binary Lab Elite, you automatically get access to Basic as well. All right, so that's going to make things a lot simpler for you. And in the process of doing so, I think okay, here's one final thing. Binary Lab Elite is going to cost you. But sometimes it is in that amount of cost that it costs you that you be super motivated to actually make something super different for yourself. This is why I say when channeled the correct way, it can actually motivate you for the right directions, for the right results. And like, this is where you are more committed to making a breakthrough for your own trading. I'll see you on the inside. This is Julian from the Binary Lab.